Hello, it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net, and in this video, I'm going to show you the 6 topspin forehand checkpoints you can use to improve your topspin forehand. Let's get right to it. This is my forehand, and I'm going to show you the 6 checkpoints. Let's get right to it. The first checkpoint is the ready position. Look at this. I'm ready. I'm split stepping as my opponent hits the ball. Well, it's a ball machine, but my racket is up in front of me. My knees are bent. I'm focused on the opponent. I am ready to move to my forehand or my backhand. Look ready in your ready position. And by the way, you should be filming yourself to make sure that you look athletic and ready when you're playing. Notice the racket is just below eye level. You want the racket up in front of you, ready to turn either direction. Checkpoint number 2. This is called the unit turn. You'll notice when I take my racket back that I still have the left hand, since I'm right-handed, connected to the throat of the racket. This provides a great coil. You want to turn your body and coil and get an oblique stretch to be able to uncoil later on in the swing. Don't just keep your left hand out in front of you if you're right-handed, but take your non-hitting hand back with the racket. Watch Djokovic when he takes his racket back. His non-hitting hand actually goes past his head. This coiling produces an uncoiling for fantastic racket speed, power, and control, believe it or not, because the racket speed can be used to impart topspin. So film yourself. Look for this in your forehand that you're taking the racket back with both hands. One last thing here. Notice my elbow is up. In fact, from the back view, we can see my armpit here. When your back elbow is up, it actually helps keep the racket more on the hitting side of the body. I want to keep the racket on this side so my swing doesn't get huge and go way too far back. So keep your back elbow up when you're taking the racket back. It'll actually help you to have a slightly smaller swing where you can handle pace and depth. So that's checkpoint number 2. Checkpoint number 3. This is called the drop. You'll notice because I took my racket slightly up on the way back, now I get to produce a drop, which gives me gravity-assisted racket speed. Watch my racket drop. It goes down. And when my racket drops down below contact, because it went high first, starting this C swing where the racket drops, you can see why it's called the letter C. Literally, I'm going to be drawing the letter C with my racket. When I drop the racket down from a high point, I now get gravity-assisted racket speed. I get a continuous swing that I get to use into the back of the ball where I'm going to produce a lot of spin and power. But one thing I want you to notice, this is so important. My racket is closed at this point. You want your racket strings to be tilted down anywhere from 30 to 45 degrees, right? So most players are like this. Most players have their racket straight up and down on edge with their strings facing directly to the side. If your racket is on edge in the back, it will actually be more difficult to have consistent shots because when your racket gets to the contact, instead of the strings facing forward, your racket will actually be facing up. When your racket is straight up and down in the back, it will actually be open at contact, which you don't want because then the ball goes over the fence. So tilt your strings down prior to contact so that you can get your strings to face forward at contact. Strings facing down and closed prior is what you've been looking for to increase the control of your shot. Now, let's take this back again. Not only are my strings down, but my racket is below the level of contact. So let's just go to contact. I'm going to draw a line. Now that line is contact height. Look at my racket. When my racket drops, it's dropping down below the level of contact. That's what's going to allow me to swing low to high and impart the spin that I need for control. So don't just drop your racket to the level of contact. Drop your racket down below the level of contact with your strings down, and then you're going to swing up to the contact. Now, let's go to contact here. I want you to notice something. First, my head is down and locked in on contact. The second thing I want you to notice is the positioning of my non-hitting hand. Remember, this line was the height of contact. I want your non-hitting hand to be above contact. This is vital. When you watch the best players in the world, they always have their non-hitting hand right here, their non-hitting hand higher than the level of contact, and or it's rising during contact. Let me show you what I mean by this. Look at the position of my left hand. Watch how it's rising to contact, and it continues to rise. Now that circle is the height of my non-hitting hand at contact. Just before contact, it was below. Just after contact, it's above. Watch Azarenka hit a forehand. Watch Serena hit a forehand. Watch Djokovic. Their non-hitting hand is up. Watch Del Potro. Their non-hitting hand rises. Dominic Thiem, the same thing. Their non-hitting hand rises through contact. The reason this is so important, remember we coiled initially. Now we're going to be able to uncoil into the shot. Many amateur players drop this non-hitting hand and then they can't turn their hips because it becomes a counterweight. You can see the same thing here from the back view. Look at my left hand rising as I'm hitting the ball. That's allowing me to rotate and go from low to high, uncoiling into the shot. Now, because I'm uncoiling, now my racket can go higher than my head. Look at my racket here. My racket is way above head level. Topspin and tennis in general is a lifting game. The more you swing up, the more the ball spins down. The more I swing up, the more the ball wants to spin down. Many players ask me in the comment section, why do I finish so high? Well, let's take, for instance, this position, the contact, as being point A, right? And now my upward swing is point B. And then let's just say I finished here and I finished down as point C. Let's say that was my swing where I went up and then down. Well, guess what happens? After a while, my brain's going to say, why do we have to go all the way up to point B? Why don't I just go straight across and take a shortcut? And this is what happens all the time. Players start swinging up, but then they say, you know what? Heck with this. I'm just going to go across since I'm going to finish low. The best way to ensure that you're swinging up is to finish up. You look at Azarenka, you look at Dominic Thiem when he's practicing forehands. You watch how high he finishes up in his left hand, catching the racket the way I do. You know, you look at Rafael Nadal hit a forehand. 70% of the time he finishes up over his head, and he's got more topspin than anybody. I want you swinging up, and a great way to ensure that is just to stay up. So I don't want you swinging across and finishing low. A lot of the way, you see like a Nick Kyrgios finish where sometimes he can finish really low. That works for him, but it just doesn't work for the average tennis player who is trying to improve their forehand. So I want you to finish up. Checkpoint number 6 is the finish. Catch the racket higher than head level, higher than eye level, ensuring that you swing up through contact. So let's go over this again. I love making these videos because it's just a comprehensive way where you can start looking at your own swing and make sure you are swinging in a way that's going to help you play your best tennis. Checkpoint number 1, the ready position. Be ready, on your toes, knees bent, wide stance, split stepping as your opponent hits the ball. Racket up in front of you and centered, ready to move in either direction, forehand or backhand. Checkpoint number 2, turn with both hands on the racket. You might even feel like the back of your front shoulder is visible to the opponent. Back elbow is up, and you can see the space here under my armpit just to make sure that my swing doesn't get too large. As the elbow drops, then the swing can get too big and starts going back here. Checkpoint number 3 is the drop. So drop the racket down below contact, and don't just drop it below contact. Make sure you tilt your strings down. That will make sure that when you swing up to the ball, your strings are facing forward. When you're at contact, checkpoint number 4, make sure that your non-hitting hand is above the level of contact and rising to that point. That allows you to uncoil into the shot. Checkpoint number 5 is the extension. Extend up, go up into the air. If you were in a room with a low ceiling, you might have seen me make videos in my basement where I'm demonstrating and I actually go up and I tap the ceiling. You want to go up like you're in the basement and you're hitting the ceiling with your racket. And then checkpoint 6 is finish high, catching the racket in your non-hitting hand. Go out and film yourself. Make sure that you look like this on your forehand, and there's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.